Hey everyone, this is episode 3. I'm Taylor Cezanne, and we're kind of shifting things up a little bit this week. So the first 2 episodes have been really focused on like birth and your options with birth. We're taking a quite a far step back and focusing on fertility and how you can really maximize your fertility and balance your hormones. We have Abbie here, and she is a fertility nutrition specialist, and she's going to share all about her work and how you can balance your hormones. So, hey, Abbie, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have this. How did you start in what you do?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in the medical field. I actually went to college pre-med. And when I was like doing experience before applying to medical school, I kind of got a real life intro to what it's like in modern medicine. I worked in the ER and I took a step back because I wasn't really aligned with the practices that were going on in there. So I took a little break, focused on my health. I had some like gut issues and not knowing that it was really hormone imbalance all along. Um, and found a program in nutrition and functional medicine. And I was like, this is right up my alley. And at the same time, I was trying to get pregnant with my son. I actually ended up conceiving the same month that I got my application into my master's program.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it took me about 8 months to get there. And so I focused a lot on like understanding my cycle, women's hormones in general. And then all through my program, I just like focused on women's health. Um, and then after I had had both of my kids, I went through lots of hormone changes that were just not, I didn't understand them. I really fell
Hmm.
into the work of fertility and women's hormones through what I was going through. After I had my daughter, so I have 2 children, I ended up having 2 miscarriages. And that's what really kind of set me in the world of helping women trying to conceive and fertility because that was hard. There was nothing easy
Yeah.
about that. And I felt blessed that I had 2 children already. And I was in a position to be able to help people going through that kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
so that's when I really fell in love with fertility and diving deep into sex hormones and stress hormones and finding out what are the root causes that are stopping people from being able to get pregnant, like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into it. Since then, I've gotten a certification in functional diagnostic nutrition. So now I can order hormone testing so we can really look at what could be the root cause that are causing hormone imbalances in women.
Oh, awesome. That's
Yeah.
so great. Yeah, I think like food, fertility specifically, like food is such a foundational piece. Like for me, I after my birth, after I gave birth, like my hormones, I totally feel you. Like my hormones were everywhere. I was like gaining weight and losing weight, like ridiculous, like 20. I remember at the worst, it was like 20 pounds within like a month, like up and down. I was like, this is not normal. Like something is wrong here or out of balance. And yeah, I it really came down to changing my food and like certain parts of my diet, and like everything came together. I think food is like the key foundational piece for sure.
I think that a lot, like in general, we weren't really taught how to eat. Like
Yeah.
we know what is healthy food, what to try to incorporate, but there is a science to how you eat that food and how you combine foods to get the most nutrients out of them to support your body the best. And hormones in general, like they need fat. They need fat to be produced, and nobody thinks like, everything you buy, your Greek yogurt, low fat, anything like
Hmm.
that. And it's the opposite of what we really should be doing for fertility. And I think it's also really hard when a lot of women, we're always so focused on losing weight. And the first thing we think that we need to do is cut calories and over exercise. And
Mm,
that's the worst thing you can do for your hormones. The worst.
yeah.
And there's just so much we can do with food. There's so much we can do with food. Food is so therapeutic. There are, I mean, you would just be surprised, like with spices. I mean, turmeric. Adding turmeric into your foods is huge. Like that alone
Mhm.
fights and inflammation, and inflammation can be a trigger for people having difficulties trying to conceive. So, like, yes, I agree with you. Food is
Yeah.
so huge, whether you're trying to conceive, you are pregnant, or you're trying to balance your hormones postpartum. Like, just
Mhm.
making sure you've got the right stuff in your diet is awesome.
Yeah, so where do you like, say like, where do you start? If like, setting aside, like, the hormone testing, like, where would you suggest people start to either, like, evaluate or changes to make? What's the like, the first step?
Yeah, so food is huge. Diet,
Mhm.
nutrition, how you eat. I think that's one of the biggest things. And it's really I focus from a place of inclusion versus exclusion because
Mhm.
I love my pizza. I love my wine.
Yeah.
I want to be able to eat chocolate. My favorite treat is almond milk with cream on my coffee, like
Yeah.
during those cravings at the end of the luteal phase or that sweet tooth during the menstrual phase. So learning what kind of foods that you need to incorporate in your diet to
Mhm.
support your menstrual cycle is one of the biggest places that you can start. Knowing that during the follicular phase, which is the first half of your cycle, right after your period ends, your body is collecting its eggs to prepare for ovulation. And you want those eggs to be as healthy as possible. So, we're going to focus on foods that are high in antioxidants. So, the biggest group is your berries, red,
Mhm.
black, blue. Those are super high in antioxidants. And then we want to focus on decreasing inflammation. So, like I said, turmeric, um, garlic, ginger, things like that. Okay. And then we kind of shift focus once we hit ovulation and we move into the second phase. And we really want to focus on supporting hormone production. That's going to be your healthy fats. We want to make sure that we're keeping our estrogen in check. And that's going to include a lot of cruciferous vegetables and fiber to get that stool moving. And then as we move on into the menstrual phase, we really want to focus on supporting nutrients because this is a super energetic process. It takes so much for your body to shed your uterine lining. And so we want to make sure that you're supporting that the blood loss with iron rich foods, lots of nutrient rich foods and minerals, cooking with seaweed.
Mhm.
Sounds so crazy, but anytime I boil something to cook, I throw a piece of seaweed in there and all the minerals will float into whatever I'm cooking.
That's a
Um,
great idea.
Yes, yes, like, so when you're, pasta, rice, stews, soups, potatoes, things like that, like,
Mhm.
toss a piece of seaweed in there, and you get loads, iodine, selenium, I think there's magnesium in there, they're just so good for you.
Yeah.
So I guess, circle back, I think that it's super important to start with understanding your menstrual cycle and what it needs during each phase, kind of sync
Mhm.
with it and making sure it's getting the nutrients that it needs.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think it's for everyone watching, like, we both are, like, into fertility, and I love that your focus is really, like, nutrition and balancing hormones, because I think that that is the foundation, and really when you start to understand your cycle and can kind of pinpoint, like, okay, this is where I'm at, and then you have for a long time, I had, like, a cheat sheet, like, okay, I'm in my follicular. This is the foods I need to make sure I'm getting. And I would like refer to it every week, like, okay, make sure I'm getting these foods in. But it can make such a small shift can make such a drastic change.
And I think that's where, like, making sure that it's an inclusion thing versus exclusion. I'm not
Hmm.
saying you can't eat your pizza during that phase. I'm not saying you can't go out and have a meal during your cycle. This is
Mhm.
things that you want to make sure that you're including into your diet during the week to help support it. Because we all need balance. If we were on a restrictive diet during this time, I mean, that's just going to make you crazy. You're
Yeah.
already in a place of like needing control over some things balanced with being able to live your life, right?
Mhm.
So I'm so big on just making sure that, you've got that smoothie in during the follicular phase that's going to support your egg development. Making sure that you're not overdoing it on the fried foods or things like that so that you're not causing oxidative stress. Sorry, those are some big words out there, but those are things that really help um, support egg development. And so when you can learn these things, like you said, you had a cheat sheet. I've been posting things on my Instagram that are like blocks, and it just literally says sync with this phase. And so I'm
Mhm.
giving you like what your moods might be like, some nutrients to try to include, exercise that might be good at this time. Um, and when you can realize that that's how you should feel, this is what should be going on, then you can isolate where imbalances are and where you can address them.
Mhm.
Because really, our cycle, it's cyclical.
Yeah.
It is cyclical. We're supposed to feel a certain way every different phase. And that's where I'm huge on connecting with our cycle, because when you can identify where you're off, there's something you can do. That's a
Mm.
healing opportunity. That's something we can address. And 99% of the time, you can do that with nutrition and lifestyle, and if need be, therapeutic supplements. I don't believe in just throwing supplements at someone and saying, "This is gonna
Mhm.
fix it." No, that's like getting you to a point where then we can manage it with nutrition and lifestyle.
Yeah. And I think one thing you had touched on, oh, I'm losing my train of thought. Um, oh, the stress. Like when you're excluding things or you're like really focused in like that diet mindset, like that causes more stress, and stress is also a hindrance to fertility and balance. We need to
So
like
much.
keep that in mind. We need to enjoy and have that pleasure and live your life. You got to have fun and, like you said, find that balance.
Oh, yeah, fertility in general can be really stressful. I mean, like, anybody knows that. I feel like once you've hit that hump of trying for so many months and it hasn't happened, it automatically you get this stress point. And I'm so passionate about helping people find the balance in that, whether it comes to nutrition or
Mhm.
like helping someone find an exercise program that works for them. Maybe they haven't done any, and now it's really hard for them to find that routine. What's the balance here? What's sustainable for you? What is not going to stress you out? Is it one
Mhm.
day a week for a month, and then the next month we move into 2 days a week? Like, we're finding something that
Yeah.
works best for you, because stress is uh, you may not even identify the stress that you're going through on a daily basis. And cortisol, which is the stress hormone, affects estrogen, affects
Mhm.
progesterone, affects insulin sensitivity, affects inflammation, and those are all key factors to fertility. So our goal is to eliminate that cortisol, and if in one of those ways is not causing a restrictive nutrition program, then that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, why add extra? Especially, like you mentioned, fertility can be so stressful for people. Um, and I think food is also a place of comfort. Like having like your favorite treat or whatever it is, like it really does, provide that comfort feeling for a lot of people.
And you don't want to go to a family function and be like, "Oh, those are my favorite cheesy potatoes. I can't have cheese." Like, no, I don't want you to feel that way unless you have a dairy intolerance. If that's the case, then I might tell you not to have the cheese. But I don't want you to have to restrict yourself and not enjoy life at the same time. And
Hmm.
a lot of on top of that, I know this is kind of like going on into a different segment, but like when you're trying to conceive, a lot of women focus on making sure that they're just having sex during the fertile window. I'm super huge on telling my clients, keep your relationship a priority. Have sex outside of that fertile window. Do
Hmm.
not just restrict yourselves, because you need to keep the flame alive, the relationship happy. You don't want to make this work, another
Yeah.
job that's stressful to you. If and orgasms decrease stress, like we
Yeah.
throughout the cycle. So I'm really big on just balance everywhere.
Yeah. Definitely. And just to piggyback off that, I read this book, I think I think it's called The Woman's Art of Arousal. It was really a fascinating book, like going into like female anatomy and pleasure, arousal, of course. But it talked about in there how orgasm also increases our chances of conception, which I thought was really cool. Like talking about how the cervix is moving during orgasm to like help the sperm kind of like come in, like a come hither kind of way. And like I just like pleasure and that enjoyment, that connection with your partner is so important and a part of that whole big picture balance.
I totally agree. I
Yeah.
totally and like the cervix in general, gosh, this I think it has to be one of the most interesting parts of the entire female anatomy. I mean, we all know that the clitoris is like nobody knows anything about it because like that's really cool. But the cervix is so amazing. Gosh, I'm going so nerdy here. But it responds to so many different stimuli. It helps us get pregnant in ways you wouldn't even know. Like cervical mucus literally is produced to help you get pregnant because it filters out bad sperm. It provides nutrients for the sperm that are in there to help them develop. And then it acts as a transport vehicle. So it actually helps the sperm move towards an egg. Like that's insanely smart. And then
Yeah.
it changes throughout your cycle. And there's 3 different types of like cervical cells that produce cervical mucus, and each one provides different properties. So, like the closer you get to ovulation, the more fertile, the more it does for those sperm that come in and just increases your chances of getting pregnant. Not
Hmm.
even considering the wave-like motions that happen when an orgasm hits and actually moves everything further. Like there's just
This,
interesting.
yeah, no, I'm right there with you with the cervix. Like it is, I mean, it's like this portal that like is holding us all together, but also like allows us to birth our creations and new humans. And I
Yeah.
love cervical fluid and mucus. Like I just think that's so interesting how it our bodies like are made for this and they know what needs to happen. And I think we've been so disconnected from just understanding our bodies that once we start to follow our cycle and we can find, like you mentioned, where our imbalances are, like there's so much power in that as women to like, this is who I am, this is my body and how it works. Like gold.
Have known about this a long time ago, right? I actually had someone, I just posted something about cervical mucus the other day, and a woman had commented, I'm 44 years old and never knew any of this. And
Yeah.
we should know what cervical mucus is. And knowing that, like the patterns of cervical mucus, if you see cervical mucus for an extended period of time in your cycle and the patterns are changing and you've got dry days in between fertile days, then that's a sign that estrogen is out of balance. Or if you don't notice any cervical mucus at all, that's another sign of hormone imbalance. And our body is constantly communicating with us, and cervical mucus is one of them. Our moods is another one of them. But if you pay attention, you can be fully aware of what it's trying to tell you. And if you've got the toolkit, knowing, oh, okay, my cervical pattern is telling me that my estrogen is probably a little too high right now. How can I fix this? Oh, I need to increase my cruciferous vegetable intake, broccoli, kale, chard, cauliflower, all of
Mhm.
that stuff to support the detox pathways of the liver to help excrete the excess estrogen that's going on. You know,
Mhm.
you should know this because I was just saying, so imagine you have cycles for the next 10 years and you have one every single month per year, right? If I'm doing my calculations right, 10 years, 12 months, that's 120 cycles, right? I'm not crazy. I'm not a math person. I'm fine. But so if every cycle something could change. Stress affects our cycle. Things that happen in our life affect our cycle. You know, the foods that we
Hmm.
eat affect our cycle. So if we can pinpoint things that are happening by understanding what our hormones and our body is telling us, what did we just do? You know, like
Yeah.
you can manage your cycle the rest of your life. You don't have to live with PMS. You don't have to live with no libido. You don't have to live with zero cervical mucus. You know, like they're
Yeah.
so passionate about this. I'm so passionate about understanding our bodies because they're constantly communicating with us.
Yes, I so agree with that. Especially I think the womb in particular is like always talking to us. Like more so, I just love the womb, so maybe I'm biased, but like it's always talking to us and giving us those signals of like, hey, this is where you're out of balance right now. Like put your attention here. And it in a way when you tune in, like it's screaming at you like, hey, this is out of balance. You're not crazy and just really angry. Like there's an imbalance here. Or you're not breaking out because you did some one thing, ate Cheetos or something, but like there's something underlying like happening. And yeah, understanding that. I think one thing how you talked about how that older woman like hadn't known there's I wish I knew this from the get-go, like back in elementary school when we had our human growth and development. Like I wanted to know this. Like it would have changed my experience as a woman, as a female,
Yeah.
into knowing who I am and what I do.
Yeah, I really want to someday. It's my goal to go and talk to young girls in middle school
Yeah.
and be able to educate them on this because I don't think that it's being taught in the classroom. And
Hmm.
if I can help them understand it and also be able to tell them, like, you don't just have to use pads. Like, there's so many different options there to help it, avoid
Hmm.
toxic exposure and things like that. And just letting them know that it's not something to be scared of. It's something
Yeah.
to embrace. It's a part of your life. And along the lines of loving our womb, us as women, we are really, really special because we have the option to bear life. And we have this womb that communicates with us. It's the fifth vital sign for women. If you're ever interested in this kind of stuff, Lisa Henderson Jack, I think that's how you say it. She has the book out, The Fifth Vital Sign, and it just is mind blowing how
Hmm.
everything that's going on inside our womb is really telling us how we're doing. Our fertility is a sign of our health.
Yeah. And absolutely like it is like the fifth vital sign. I mean, it is like an overall picture of your whole body. Like your fertility is, it's not just for getting pregnant, it's not for avoiding pregnancy. Like it's a snapshot of like, this is how you're doing overall. And that's so cool. Like
It's
that's so cool.
cool. I love it. And I focus a lot on charting your cycle
Hmm.
using your period, your basal body temperature, your cervical mucus, your cervical position to really understand what's going on inside your cycle. Um,
Hmm.
and it's crazy what that can tell us, like actually describing your period to me can tell me a lot about your hormones. Just your period. I bet
Yeah.
even getting into your basal body temperature chart or your cervical mucus patterns or the length of your luteal phase or what your temperatures look like in your luteal phase.
Uh-huh.
All of those things are key factors into telling me about your fertility. And that's without even going into hormone testing, just using your body as a sign of telling me what is going on. I think it's so amazing.
It is. Yeah. And I like nerd out on this stuff as much as you do. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool.
I know.
uh, so what I'm just curious, like what do you recommend for like charting wise? Like do you have a certain app that you recommend or just paper, pen, kind of old school?
Whatever feels good to someone.
Yeah.
Some people really love the paper charts, and
Uh-huh.
that's awesome. Um, in my stage of life, I don't have really a place where I can keep a paper chart and go to town on it every night.
Hmm.
That's not me right now. I personally use the Kindara app. I love it. I love the visual. I love the way the chart looks.
Mhm.
I also love it because I can see my clients' charts. It's got like a practitioner portal, so I can connect with my clients and I can see their charts real time. And so, like, when we have consults, I can be like, "Do you see on cycle day 15, like we had this or whatever?"
Mhm.
And then I also really like the Pre-Mom app because for people that are doing like LH strips and all that kind of stuff, um, it has an option to like take a picture of it and it'll quantify it for you.
Nice.
So then you can kind of see where your peaks are and things like that. And then I'm also advisor on their app. So anybody that has a pre-mom chart can request to consult someone. And then it also works really good because that's a practitioner portal. So I can connect with any of my clients that have the pre-mom app. Um, I do really, really, really feel strongly about using apps where you can track your basal body temperature.
Yeah.
Because when you're just putting in your period, the app is like, yes, it's going to be pretty accurate on guessing your fertile window and when your next period is going to come. But ovulation changes every month. It doesn't always happen on the same day. So your fertile window can move around, and your fertile window truly depends on your cervical mucus, your cervical position, and your window may differ from someone else's. It's
Mhm.
not always exactly the same. So I'm really huge on making sure that when you are trying to understand your fertility, tracking your cycle just to know it, or trying to conceive, making sure that when you find an app, paper chart, you're definitely tracking your basal body temperature because that's where you're going to see um, ovulation, your temp shift, how well your luteal phase is, and things like that.
Yeah. That's a great point. For so long, I mean, before I really got into like fertility and hormone balancing and like the whole womb stuff, I was following my app and I genuinely thought like it was my fertile window, like just based on what it told me. I was like, okay, this is when I'm going to be more fertile. And that's really not the case, especially like stress, diet, so many things that happen before ovulation can really affect when that ovulation happens.
Yeah. And the other thing is so like you can still have like if the app told you maybe your fertile window was cycle days, 13 to 16, right?
Hmm.
And then you could still ovulate on day 19, but have the same length of a cycle as if you ovulated on day 16. I don't know if that makes sense, but like
Yeah.
our luteal phase, the last half of our cycle, can change its length. A healthy luteal phase is 10 to 16 days. Okay. We're looking for optimal is 12 to 14 days. But that's still quite a window, 10 to 16 days.
Yeah.
So that's where we can be thrown off in the fertile window if maybe this cycle, instead of ovulating on day 16, you ovulated on day 19, but your luteal phase is only 10 days instead of 14 days. That's still the
Hmm.
state cycle, but still
Yeah.
ends up on, what was it? What did I say? 16, 14, 30-day cycle. um, but you could have totally missed your fertile window.
Yeah.
So,
And kind of cycling back to like food specifically, is there something I know you mentioned? So like follicular phase, a lot of like the fresh fruits, berries. Is there anything other like key things you recommend or try to get in for that phase?
um, so yeah, lots of antioxidants, anti-inflammatory. We want to support minimal stress. I think so it really goes hand in hand, the nutrition and the lifestyle stuff. We can eat a lot of good foods, right? You can eat
Hmm.
all the healthy foods in the world, but if you're not managing your stress, if you're not getting solid sleep, if you're not moving your body, those can all affect it too.
Hmm.
So, yes, follicular phase, you want to focus on the berries, the antioxidants. You want to focus on anti-inflammatory diet, so minimal processed foods, whole grains. Those are super high in B vitamins, which are supportive for egg development as well. making sure you've got the healthy fats in, preparing for ovulation. And those are like your nuts, seeds, coconut, olive oil, avocado. That's huge to try and incorporate in your diet. You can also get fats through wild caught salmon or grass-fed beef. Things like that. But like I said, yeah, making sure you're managing your stress, because if your
Mhm.
cortisol's up, that's going to increase inflammation. It's going to increase insulin resistance. It can cause estrogen dominance. And then if you don't manage that stress, you can cause delayed ovulation. It can also affect your progesterone production in the luteal phase, which can decrease your body's ability to implant a fertilized egg. And it can cause a short luteal phase, which will lead to inability to progress a pregnancy.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about moving on to like the menstrual phase, or I'm sorry, ovulation? Like, is there something, any food specifically for ovulation that you recommend or that you try to include?
Ovulation is really a good time for healthy fats. You want to make sure that your hormones are supported. So this
Hmm.
big shift from your at ovulation, when the egg is released from the ovary, the, like, I want to say, shell that it was in is called the corpus luteum, and that's where all of our progesterone is being produced. And if we cannot make enough progesterone after ovulation, it's pregnancy isn't going to happen. So at ovulation, you want to make sure that you are eating your healthy fats. It's really similar to the follicular phase, keeping the inflammation down, keeping the antioxidants rich, keeping the stress down. Like I said, stress can definitely delay ovulation. And then at ovulation, you have really high energy levels. So this is a really good time to get your blood moving. If you're into high
Hmm.
intensity exercises or moderate intensity, that blood flow is going to make sure that nutrients are getting to the womb. And then that makes you feel really good. So.
Yeah. And I think what I've noticed is like with that increase of energy, it can also make us feel like a little anxious almost because we have so much energy. And if we become aware that like, oh, we're just in our ovulation, phase, like our that little time period, like, oh, maybe I'm not anxious, but I need to move my body. Like I need to do something
Mhm.
to bring back that balance so I'm not so in my head and anxious about things.
I also think during ovulation, people don't even consider this, but when you're feeling anxious, there's two ways that you could take care of that, right? One of them is go exercise, right? Move your body,
Hmm.
or you can have an orgasm because your body is naturally high in libido right now.
Yeah.
Take testosterone and estrogen together, your body literally is looking to have sex. So
Hmm.
that is a really great way to fight anxiety during ovulation. So I always
Yeah.
like to throw that out there because exercise is really awesome, but we also don't want it to be our sole coping mechanism, right?
Hmm.
For anxiety or stress, we want to kind of have options for self-care and managing those things. And sometimes that's the best way to go too.
Yeah, or even just like a pleasure practice or like self pleasure. Yeah, just like making something special for you
Yeah.
to climax and like have that release, but you don't have to have a partner necessarily to do that, of course.
Nope, nope, it's about you. I think that's one of
Yeah.
the biggest things that I need to push when it comes to self-care. I always ask my clients, what did you do for yourself today? And if it
Hmm.
takes them more than 30 seconds to answer me, then I know they didn't do anything and they're not really taking care of themselves. And so when you do things that are to make you feel good, to decrease your stress or your anxiety, I want them all to be from a place of self-love. I'm doing this to make myself feel good. This is a time that I'm taking for me, my
Hmm.
body, my mind. So whether that's exercising because it makes you feel good, doing a creative activity because it makes you feel pleasurable, or having an orgasm by yourself because that's a time for you. You just did that for you, not for anybody else.
Hmm.
Um, I think that is so underrated when it comes to people taking care of themselves and getting healthy. Self-care is so important. And it's not just going to get your nails done or doing a face mask. And yes, that makes us feel good too. But we need to have an arsenal of things that we can pull out and check in with your body. What do I need right now? What is going to make me feel best?
Hmm. And to add on to that, I think when you understand your cycle, it becomes so much easier to know like what you need dependent on which phase you're in. You're like, okay, I'm in my luteal phase, feeling kind of a little like emotions are higher then that can be easier triggered. So you're aware of that and you can choose to make that choice like, okay, I'm going to do this for myself today and take care of me because I need it. And it's hard to do that, to like make that time for yourself and to do it because especially I like as a partner and a mom, like it's really hard to make that time and to like, okay, I'm important too. My self-care matters.
I was just telling someone the other day, um, when I'm MIA and like nobody can really find me or I haven't answered any text messages, it's usually the end of my luteal phase or right before my menstrual cycle. And
Hmm.
it's because I'm binge reading books because that's how I feel really good during that time of my cycle. I
Yeah.
like shut off from the world. I read a really awesome book, maybe two, and my kitchen might be a mess, but like that's I am so big on taking care of myself because I need to show up in so many different ways throughout the day. Like
Yeah.
I said, for a partner, for a family, for children, for a household. For me, it's my business. My husband owns a business and I help with that. Like there's just a lot that goes into life and we really have to focus on taking care of ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so important. There was
Mhm.
something I lost it again. But coming back to the luteal phase, is there like foods you include or you recommend? I know you mentioned like the broccolis, kale, cauliflower, those sorts of things.
Yeah. So during our luteal phase, so precursor to luteal phase, follicular and ovulatory, you have a surge of estrogen. Okay, that's when estrogen is the highest, and then production drops off. So if you in the luteal phase, we want to make sure that we're getting out all of that estrogen, because our body's constantly making it. We need to get out what it already produced. If we have too much estrogen in our luteal phase, it can affect our progesterone production. So, because they kind of counteract each other in actions. So if there's too much estrogen, you automatically are going to have low progesterone. Okay. So in the luteal phase, you want to focus on cruciferous vegetables to decrease your estrogen. You want to kind of focus on getting your carbohydrates from vegetables in general. We tend to be a little bit more resistant to what am I trying to say? Our insulin sensitivity is decreased. So we want to make sure that we don't become resistant to insulin. So we want to keep our carbohydrates coming from vegetables, not so much fruits. So
Mm-hmm.
follicular phase, fruits, luteal phase, vegetables. You also want to try and keep them cooked during the end of your luteal phase as your body's gearing up for menstruation. It makes it easier for our body to digest them.
Hmm.
Okay, so that you want to try and include raw carrots. The compounds in raw carrots bind estrogen for excretion. So that's super good. So you can eat all the
Yeah.
cruciferous vegetables you want to support the detox pathways, but if we're not making sure that estrogen is getting out,
Hmm.
it may not help. On top of that, you really want to make sure you're eating your healthy fats to support progesterone production.
Hmm.
Um, so yes. Yes, and then
I also, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna kind of move into, like, exercises, moderate
Yeah.
to low intensity, your mood, you tend to be a little bit more introverted, you wanna spend a little bit more time by yourself, but not quite so hermit as you are in your menstrual phase, um,
Hmm.
and yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just gonna say, I think I've noticed in myself and my clients, like especially in the luteal phase, like when you focus on getting those healthy fats in, it also really helps curb those like cravings for sugar and the sweets. And like just by focusing on adding more healthy fats, like I'm not like sugar hungry in my luteal phase.
In general, it's really important to keep the healthy fats in your meals because it balances your blood sugar. So if you were to just eat carbohydrates, that's a fast sugar to metabolize, right? So
Hmm.
you automatically get this spike. But if you're making sure that your meals and your snacks have your carbohydrates, your fats, and your proteins, that's three different sources of sugar. They get broken down into energy particles, right? And so when you have that, you're balancing your blood sugar throughout an extended period of time instead of just providing energy for this amount of time with carbohydrates. Add in fat, you've got this much energy. Add in protein, you've got this much energy to process. So you stay fuller longer.
Hmm.
So definitely something you want to keep in. But yes, it's going to curb your cravings in the luteal phase. And also when you cook your vegetables, they tend to be a little bit more sweeter, easier for you to digest, and that will also help decrease your cravings.
Yeah. I love like during my luteal phase, just like making a huge sheet pan of like broccoli and cauliflower and kale and just roasting it up. And it is like kind of sweet, but also like so healing for the body during that phase.
Yeah. And people like you don't have to restrict your cravings either. Like these are definitely ways to support less cravings.
Hmm.
Um, And with balanced hormones, less cravings really come at you in general. But like dark chocolate is a really awesome way to support cravings, right? Dark chocolate, like 60 to at least 60 to 70% cacao is going
Hmm.
to provide you with antioxidants, you know? And like I said, my almond milk whipped cream on my coffee,
Yeah.
that's a full fat option, you know?
Hmm.
So it's actually not like the worst thing in the entire world. But those are kind of things that you want to look for.
Yeah. And also to bring the pleasure back into, kind of stepping away from the stress of everything and like enjoying the moment and what you're eating. And if it's the whipped cream, like by all means do that if it's making you feel good.
Yeah, just not on like 3 coffees a day, right? For the whole
Yeah.
time of your luteal phase. Be mindful and moderate about those kind of things. But yeah, I don't ever want to tell clients to restrict themselves. It just
Hmm.
creates a bad feedback loop that we really don't want to, you know, continue with.
Yeah.
We want to work with our bodies, not against them. So
Hmm. And then we touch on menstruation? I know you said like seaweeds are great. And I love that idea to add like just add the seaweed into whatever you're cooking, like boiling or whatever it is. Like I never heard of that one. So I'm like, nugget, that's perfect.
yeah, during menstruation, also because you're shedding the uterine lining, a lot of nutrients are being depleted, energy is being depleted. You may not, so I tend to be hungrier during my luteal phase. And then as soon as menstruation hits, I'm kind of just blah, right? So this is also a really good time to consume like bone broth. The collagen in bone broth will help support the growing tissues or
Mhm.
the recreation of your uterine lining. And so that's probably one of my favorite things to do during menstruation is heat up bone broth with
Yeah.
you can also find some bone broths that already have like herbs and spices and like vegetables in them where it was cooked with. And
Hmm.
then you can add in seaweed while you reheat it.
Yeah.
And I love adding like cut up cilantro and black pepper. Like that is just
Hmm.
one of my favorite things during the menstrual phase, but really, really heavy on nutrients.
Hmm.
Seaweed, stews, those are really good, like soups and stews full of whether there's meat or just vegetables in there. That's super,
Yeah.
super supportive during the menstrual phase because you can kind of get as much stuff as you want in one of those. And I always
Hmm.
go through this and like, okay, what do I have to throw in here? Okay, yep, that's good. Awesome. I'm not the biggest fan of like cooked cauliflower. So I'll
Hmm.
make sure if I'm using cauliflower, then that's going to be like a blended soup for me.
Oh, nice.
Oh, another trick. Okay, I just told something about this. Okay, if you haven't put frozen cauliflower in your smoothies yet, do it. It makes
Yeah.
so creamy. You have no idea it's there. But that is a super easy way to get some cruciferous vegetables in if they're not a big fan.
Yeah, that is a great idea. I love doing that. And yeah, cauliflower is perfect because it doesn't really have a flavor. And like if you add some berries or something, like you really can't taste it at all.
My go-to is raspberries and pineapple.
Ooh, yum.
Yeah, that's a great little treat there.
Yeah, awesome. And is there any other big practices that you use in your personal life or with your clients, like just any big tips or overarching things that we haven't talked about?
So I think one of the biggest things that I like to talk about, I've touched on it a bunch today, is just being intuitive, you
Mm,
know, taking the time to connect with your body, hear what it's trying to tell you, understand what it's trying to say, and having grace with yourself. You know, we're not perfect beings, and just knowing that if you're experiencing something now, you have the ability to change it your next cycle. Um,
mhm.
for example, I had some rough 2 cycles in a row. Normally, if I have one bad cycle, I'm like, "Okay, could have been something," but if it happens again, then I know that it's coming from a hormone imbalance. And
Mhm.
I really took the time to understand, okay, this is what it was telling me. These are the things I need to do. Um, I was having horrible breast pain all throughout the luteal phase, nipple tingling, headaches, nausea, cramping days before my period was coming, just a lot of not a fun things. And I
Yeah.
really took the time the next cycle to just make sure I was incorporating what I wanted. I still lived the life I wanted, but making sure that I included what I needed. Um, a lot of it was stemming from estrogen dominance. And so making sure that I was getting the estrogen out in the luteal phase. And guys, I can't even tell you the world of the difference it made. I mean, the only reason I knew my period came was because it came, like, it got there.
Yeah.
You know, like I had
Yeah.
no nausea, no headaches, like nothing. It was so amazing. So if you are suffering from anything like that, if you're experiencing imbalances, but you're not sure how to fix them, there are things we can do. You don't
Yes.
have to live with that kind of things. We can support your menstrual cycle. You can live with it, not against it. Take these signs as not looking at your body like there's something wrong with it, but it's telling you what it needs so that you can live optimally.
Hmm. I can so relate to that. I remember this was probably a year or two ago, like when I really was like kind of strict, like, okay, I'm in this phase. These are the only foods I'm eating. Like I was too strict with it probably, but like I didn't have any symptoms, like my normal cramping, bloating, like my period just came and I felt so good. And like and I think we're similar, but like that's what I want for other women. Like that it doesn't have to be an awful time of the month. I think we mentioned like 120 days, was it? Like of your cycle, like it doesn't have to be awful. That's 3 months of your life.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I couldn't even work out for the last 2 weeks of my cycle. My entire luteal phase, I had no energy. I like just could not bring myself to do it. And the only time I lost energy was like the day my period came. And then I was okay again. And it's like just to have the energy to get out of bed in the morning, like that is so huge. And we don't have to be tired all the time. There's a way to
Hmm.
be past that without having to be restrictive. We can do this
Yeah.
all with balance.
Yeah. And if people are interested in like working with you or like maybe reaching out, how can they get a hold of you best?
Yeah, so my Instagram page is where I do a lot of my content at balancing.nutrition. So you can find me there, message me there. My website is lotuswomenswellness.com. So I work with anybody when it comes to hormone imbalance, trying to conceive, postpartum, anything like that. I love just helping anyone however I can. So yeah, you can find me all there.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, let me see. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
Mm,
I
no,
know we
I feel
talked
like
about a lot.
It's so much stuff. I don't want to overwhelm
Yeah.
anyone.
Oh, one thing I did want to touch on is like with the estrogen in the luteal phase, like our bodies are producing it. I think it's also important to take into consideration the outside influences of estrogen. Like we just live in this world where our beauty products have toxins that are really not helping our hormone balance.
No, I mean, it's our beauty products. It's what we eat our food from. I just posted this the other day. I showed that I was tossing the top tortilla out of the bag of tortilla shells because that's the one that was in contact with the plastic,
Hmm.
right? The top one and the bottom one. I usually toss the top or the outside two, and then we'll
Yeah.
put the other ones in a different container. I love silicone Ziplocs, like
Hmm.
casher bags, but you don't even think about what your food is coming into contact with. Um,
Yeah.
so that, what else? Like your water bottles, you get a plastic water bottle that has been through heat that automatically has plastics in your water that's affecting you. The pesticides that are on our foods can affect our estrogens. These are all like considered xenoestrogens or hormone disruptors.
Hmm.
So that is super huge in making sure that you are understanding where those extra hormone disruptors are coming from. So a lot of the times the beauty products is the easiest way to start, that and like your cleaning products. So anytime you're out of something, replacing it with a clean one. That way you're not just like full forward. That can get kind of
Yeah.
expensive, but replacing as you need. That's an easy way to do it. Um,
Hmm.
changing your cookware and your storage ware. So like switching to glass, stainless steel, silicone, all of that good stuff. I love beeswax wraps for like
Yeah.
wrapping up. Those are actually really awesome for wrapping up my avocados or sandwiches or snacks for the kids. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's huge. Making sure that you're
Yeah.
not getting excess estrogen in through that because that can be super harmful.
Hmm.
And that also goes for men too. It's not just for women. I actually worked with a man once who was having hormone issues. And
Hmm.
I made sure to like explain that you could be getting estrogen in through this way. And he had no idea, but some of the steps that we took to balance it out and felt like a man again.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I think your work and what you're doing is so important and like really changing the way we're able to experience our lives as women and just people and feeling more balanced and secure in who we are and like what we do for ourselves on a daily basis. So I applaud you. I think your work is so important and amazing.
Thank you. I love sharing. I love educating. I love helping people. I love everything I'm doing. It just feels so good. And I walk away from work every day just like smiling. Like I really hope I helped someone today, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us. Anyone can get a hold of Abbie through her Instagram or her website. I'm sure she'd be more than open and happy to talk to you. And yeah, thank you all. I hope you have a great day.
Bye guys.
What these words do, and what these words do, sure as flight in a dash unruly, faster than a breath you're heaving. You're wild as a righteous fury,